We're in the middle of chapter 3 here, the Maimer Padav Shalom Tafshin Lametes. Hopefully the mic is working. If it's cutting in and out, how would you know? If it's cutting in and out, somebody can comment and then you'll keep track of that and I'll just unplug the microphone. Hopefully we're on a new connection now. We're in the Maimer here in chapter 3. Let's work through what we're talking about here, okay? So, we're talking about the idea of war and peace. Not as a concept of war and peace, but the concept of the impact or the way we influence and transform our animalistic selves, our bodies, our Yetzer Hara, how we transform it. And so there are two ways to do it. You can either do it in a manner of battle, of wrestling, or you can do it in a way of peace. A couple of classes about this. That the idea of not that the old notion of how one can refine themselves, which is to oppress themselves, to persecute themselves, to torture their bodies, to neglect their bodies. That's not what we're talking about. What we mean by we mean struggling, like an that takes place, where the body wants one thing, sees things one way, the soul sees things another. Is that the soul has to try and get into the mind as a member of the body, works for it, what language it speaks, and it needs to speak the language of the body and entice the body and convince the body that serving God is the way to go, that its interests are the way to go. That's what we mean by war, meaning that there's an engagement that takes place, a struggle that takes place within, where the soul needs to understand the body and then be able to try and focus the body and channel it to the right place. That's what we say is milchama. What's peace? Peace is when you overwhelm the body. That's what we're working with so far, where the desire of the neshama is so intense that we're not even talking about the body. And so the body and the animal soul end up just getting swept away in the moment as well. This is generally the difference, the impact that we have on ourselves, the transformation that happens through davening versus learning. That when a person davens, davening is an extremely personal time, and a time shas krava, that the time of davening, the time of prayer, is a time of battle. And that's because when we daven, it's about trying to influence and speak the language of the body, to try and inspire the body. And so you sit there and you see the davening is struck down in a way that step by step through that process. But that's why it's called a battle. The body, to try and sensitize the body, to try and make the body more sensitive, till the person comes to love God on that level as well. Learning Torah, on the other hand, when we study Torah, the objective isn't transformation. The objective isn't refinement. The objective is to understand God's will, to understand God's intellect, to get into God's mind, so to speak. What happens is, when a person is focused on understanding godliness, when a person is studying Torah, and his mind is suddenly filled with God's wisdom, automatically place. So here, that's called peace, in the sense that you're not negotiating with the body, you're not wrestling with the body, you're not trying to. The mind is in the clouds, and because it lifts the whole person automatically. That comes along. So that's generally how these two. The idea of learning, how they impact us and influence us. That is wrestling, of war, of struggle, whereas learning is through things. It says that in this Maimer, which is based on a who was freed from prison in relation to his birthday and yard site, which is the 9th of Kislev, and his day of liberation, which is Yud Kislev. Maimer is all about the idea of Padav Shalom. In this Maimer, the Mittel says itself, we find these two things: war and peace. And so this is what we're getting into now in chapter 3. How do we find war and peace in davening? So he said, it's not working?
No, he says without.
Okay.
Try it.
Let's try without it. How do we have war and peace in davening? So this is like this. The whole idea of davening is to come to love God. That's mentioned one of the footnotes here. Footnote footnote 24. So in davening we say, in Shema we say, "V'ahavta Hashem Elokecha," we should love God. We say, how do you, we're supposed to love God b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meidecha, with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. So these are three levels. There's loving God with all your heart, that's one. B'chol nafshecha, all your soul, that's another element of that love. And b'chol meidecha, with all your might, that's the third element of love of God. So we have three levels of love, three aspects of love that we're trying to achieve within davening. What's the difference between these three? So, back it up a little bit, and we discussed this already at length, but let's just review again. The neshama, we know we have 5 levels of the soul. There are the 3 levels of the soul that are invested in the body, nefesh, ruach, and neshama. Then there's the level chaya, which transcends, and yechida, which is like the essence of the soul. So 3 levels that are within, and 2 levels that are outside. We discussed what does it mean that they're internal, what does it mean that they're transcendent. We don't have to get into it again, but the Naran represents the Koiches Pnimim, the intellect, the emotions, which are internalized. Chaya represents will, which is a transcendent aspect, and Yechida, which is the essence, is even more removed than that. We discussed the 3 different types. We have food, which is internalized, which we ingest and internalize, and then that transformation happens from within. Then you have clothing, which are outside, the impact aspect from the outside. Then you have a house, which protects us also and offers, it impacts us on some level, but also from the outside, from a further aspect, further away. So he says like this, so these 5 levels of the soul can really be divided into 3 levels. We discussed this in the last time as well, the 3 levels of the table, right? So it's 5 that can be divided into 3. How? The 3 internal, they're all internal, so they all count as 1 level. Chaya and Yechid are also fundamentally different, and so they count as 2. One is, in Hasidic terminology, makif hakarev and makif harachik, a closer, transcendent aspect and a more distant one. But these are, so we can divide the 5 levels of the soul into 3 categories. These 3 categories correspond to these 3 levels of love that we're talking about. The Ava, b'chol levavcha, b'chol nafshecha, b'chol meidecha. So, the Rebbe explains like this. The love of b'chol levavcha with all your heart, that the Chazal say, b'chol levavcha, the word levavcha with all your heart is like sounds plural. Why? Because it means b'shnei yitzrachot, your 2 inclinations, your good inclination, your evil inclination. So the idea of b'chol levavcha is to get our evil inclination also loving God. How do we do that? By engaging it, by speaking its language, by engaging it and explaining to it why why God is good for it as well, why it's in its best interest as well. That's the Ava b'chol levavcha. So that would correspond to around the first 3 levels of the soul. The love of b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, that corresponds to chayat, the level of will. That's an overwhelming sort of will. And then b'chol meidecha, with all your might, that corresponds to yechida. We'll get into all that as soon inside the mind. But that's how he divides it. Now let's get inside here. Let's learn from ha'ava the b'chol levavcha. Yeah, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in. Let's go from ava b'gush. Okay, so let's go 4 lines in. So he says that generally we divide in chapter 3. Generally we divide this idea of transformation through battle and struggle versus transformation through peace. We divide that along the lines of Torah and davening. Davening is battle and Torah is peace. But in this mind of the Rebbe, it's explained that also in davening we find these 2 methods of transformation. There's the love of all, Ava in general. Also, we mentioned in note 24. The whole idea of davening is to reach this level of Ava. So with love. So when we say love of b'chol levavcha, that's the first level of love, which is shemitzad b'chinas naran. That corresponds to the first level of the soul, which is the 3 levels of nefesh, ruach, and even though with this love, the idea is to influence the animal soul, that it should also love God, which is b'chol levavcha b'shnei yitzrachot. That's like the Chazal say, that b'chol levavcha means with your 2 inclinations. Nevertheless, since how do you get your animal soul to love God? By explaining to it that God is the ultimate good, and is therefore the ultimate good for it, for the animal soul. So since it comes through this idea of hisbanus, of contemplation and explanation, since intellect is an internal function, meaning that it is invested within the thing that it impacts and influences how you move. So then it's obvious, it's understood that the impact that the godly soul has on the animal soul to love God is because the godly soul has to be invested and enclosed within the animal soul. That the godly soul needs to speak the language that the animal soul can understand. This investing into the animal soul, this is the idea of war. Remember we talked about in the last class this idea of war. We gave an analogy of a court case, right? So you have somebody is on trial, and you have a prosecutor that's laying out all the charges against them and making the case for why this person should be found guilty. Then you have the defense attorney. The defendant has a lawyer that has to listen to the arguments of the prosecutor, and he has to counter those arguments. So what happens? You have two sides arguing and debating a case in the status of this individual. In order for the defense attorney to mount an effective defense argument, he needs to listen to the prosecutor. He needs to know what his arguments are, what the arguments he's putting forth are, what his evidence is, and then he has to be able to counter it. So the defense attorney needs to sort of be invested, needs to pay attention, obviously, to what the prosecution is saying, and then counter those arguments. So you have sort of a tit for tat. That's the battle that's going on. In order to counter the arguments, you have to hear the arguments. So in other words, even if the defense attorney is convinced that his client is innocent, nevertheless, he has to entertain the idea that his client is guilty by entertaining the ideas presented by the prosecution. Then he has to understand those ideas. Then he has to counter them. But the point is that there's a battle that's going on here, where the defense attorney needs to counter the specific arguments that are put forth by the prosecution. That's the meaning of hislapshus here. When we talk about hislapshus and being included in the godly soul influencing the animal soul, put it in other terms. Somebody wants to a teacher is teaching a student. So if you're a teacher-student, if you want your student to understand what you're teaching, you need to assess your student's capacity to understand. You need to know your student's background, what your student's knowledge is, and what your student's intelligence level is. And based on that, you could then teach the student in the most effective way. So the point is that the teacher needs to invest himself, as it were, in the student. His mind, he has to get into the student's mind. How does the student see things? How does the student understand things? After doing that, then the teacher needs to teach his knowledge in a way that the student can understand. So he has to dress it up in parables, metaphors, give analogies, in order for the student to be able to understand and to digest the idea that the teacher is teaching. So this is the idea of hislapshus. When the godly soul wants to convince the animal soul to love God, what does it have to do? It needs to understand where the animal soul is coming from, what its world is, and then, based on what appeals to the animal soul, it then has to explain to God, to the animal soul, that God is the ultimate good for it, but in a language that it understands. This tells a story about Moshe, Yitzchaki, the Mashpia, that when he used to Fabring, so he used to use very harsh language. So they once asked him, why do you speak so vulgar? So he said, that's the language of his animal soul understands. He wants to influence his animal soul, he needs to speak its language. But if you can talk its language, then you can. But if you're going to talk in abstraction, you're going to talk in this sort of highfalutin language, it's not going to appeal to the animal soul. The animal soul's not interested in that. You got to talk its language. So that is then war. So when we say that you have to love God with all your heart, that corresponds to naran. Naran means they have to make an argument, an intelligent argument. And therefore this corresponds to Naran, because Naran represents the internal functions of the soul. That's intelligence and the emotions. So to appeal to the animal soul, you need to use your internal faculties as well. So that corresponds to Naran. And that's why we call it battle, because you need to counter the arguments of the animals. Furthermore, this love of all your soul, which that corresponds to the level of chaya, even though chaya is a transcendent level, and then the influence, the transformation that is affected on the animal soul from this level, from Chaya, is not because you've explained anything to the animal soul and you spoke its language, but because the godly soul has this intense, raging love for God. And so that intensity, which is Ratzon Shalman Latam, desire which is higher than reason, so this then causes automatically for the animal soul to sort of be nullified, to be silenced. Back to the analogy of the court case, we gave an analogy of two lawyers arguing over the whether the person's innocent or guilty. And then we said, what happens when the king walks in? This is the way it's always discussed in the example given, that traditionally, when the king walked into the court, that means life, everybody's acquitted of everything. To put it maybe more closer related to what we're saying here, you have a defense, the prosecution gets up and the guy's with all his theatrics and makes his argument that he's commanding the courtroom, but then the king walks in. And what happens? You got quiet. You're silenced. The king is here. You're not going to be mispashet. You're not going to be, carrying on and performing in front of the king in that way. You're automatically silenced. Taking to the next step, the idea that the king walks in and therefore the person is automatically acquitted. Everybody's free because of the great intensity of the king. The king is all about life, and so therefore the case sort of is suddenly over, right? Or like we said in modern times, the president has the capacity to commute a sentence or to pardon a person, and so everything that's been maybe going through the court system for years and years and years, in one level, one court case, and one ruling, another ruling, and you have reams of paper that are used to discuss this case. The president, with a couple of strikes of his pen, the whole thing is over. So that here already, in that sense, when the king walks in, he's not listening to the prosecution. He's not countering the arguments of the prosecution. It's his mere presence that overwhelms the prosecution, and that silences it, subdues it. So the same is true here. We talk about b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, and we say that corresponds to Chaya. Chaya is a transcendent level. That's which represents Ratzon, our will. Will is transcendent. We discussed in the last class. We discussed many times before. So when you have an intense will, when the intense will of the godly soul is active, is expressed, so everything else is quiet. Just like when you want something very badly, you can't think of anything else. Right? Everything else that's going on in your life, everything else you're thinking about, when you're completely singularly focused on achieving or fulfilling, satisfying that will, nothing else matters. Everything else is out the window. It overwhelms everything. So here, you haven't transformed anything. I haven't transformed any of my other wills for other things now and focused them to this will. They're just completely subdued. So generally, this idea we refer to as peace. Generally, we contrast the two dueling lawyers versus the king walking into the room as war and peace. The two lawyers are dueling, so that's war, that's a battle. They're sparring intellectually. But the king walks in, there's no sparring going on anymore. It's over. The whole thing is shut down, right? So that's peace. So here the Rebbe says no. Based on what we're saying in the mind of the Middle Rebbe, that's also not peace. He said, Afal Pikei, nevertheless, since true that the animal soul is completely subdued in the presence of the intense will of the godly soul, nevertheless, since it comes from that outside, higher, overwhelming power, when you overwhelm the animal soul, so true you've subdued the enemy, and it's done in a non-combative way. But the fact is the enemy still remains. The enemy is still there. It's just that he's been completely subdued, he's completely silenced. So the animal soul hasn't been transformed in this sense. Yes, we're saying it's peaceful in that now I don't have an internal struggle. Before I was struggling, I had the love for God, I have the love for everything else, and that's a cause for struggle. So when I activate my will of my godly soul, and it's so overwhelming and so powerful that it subdues the animal. So now there's peace in that I'm not conflicted, because my desires of my animal soul have been completely subdued. But they're still there. So this is already another level. When we're talking about the godly soul influencing the animal soul, we're validating the animal soul's existence, we're validating its desires and its wills, we're just kind of trying to convince it to focus them to God, to also come around to one God. Here, this is a more powerful thing where we've subdued the animal soul. But nevertheless, could you say that this is peace? It's not peace in that the animal soul still has its will. Going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the Maimer, that we had 3 stages of peace we spoke about. When you have an enemy, you could defeat your enemy by fighting with the enemy and defeating the enemy, or suppressing the enemy, right? Pushing the enemy off, fighting the enemy off. Then you have, and that's a war. There's a battle that goes on, there's combat that happens, and that's a very ugly war in order to defeat your enemy. Then you have a defeat that happens by simply flexing your muscles, showing your enemy your might. The enemy sees how strong you are and they run away. So here there's already no battle. But even though you've caused your enemy to retreat, it's still an enemy. Then the ultimate peace, we said, is a peace where the enemy is transformed into a friend. So here it's not that you've vanquished your enemy, it's not like you've suppressed your enemy, it's not like you've scared the enemy off. There is no enemy. The enemy has been transformed into a friend. So could you say that on the level of the Ava, of B'chol Nafshecha, this love of all your soul, meaning the love of Chai, that we subdue or we influence the animal soul because of the great intense love that the godly soul feels for God? Could we say that that's the ultimate level of peace? It's not the ultimate peace. Because the animal soul is still the animal soul, with it's still its interest. It's just that it's been completely silenced, it's been completely subdued. But it hasn't been transformed, it hasn't become a friend. What is then, when we say Pada B'Shalom Nafshi, that my soul was redeemed in peace, what is the real peace that we're talking about? Which is Shemitzad B'Chinas Yechida. That's the 3rd level of love that's listed in the Shema, the love of all your might, which comes because of Yechida, from the highest level of the soul, the essence of the soul. Why is that bring about peace? This is like this. Since when we're talking about the level of Yechida, there is no counter, there is no adversary to that level of the soul. It doesn't have a shadow of a shadow. Therefore, when that's revealed, when the essence of the soul is revealed, there is no longer any challenge. Not that the challenge has been subdued, the challenge or the animal soul has been subdued, but it's completely gone. It completely ceases to exist. An example for this would be, going back to the other analogy, I think you could say that we said, what happens when you have a battle, which is two lawyers dueling it out in court. Then you have the peace, which we said was when the king walks in and suddenly the prosecution is subdued. So here, what's the difference? Why is one peace and one war? Because war means that the defense attorney needs to listen to the prosecution, needs to validate, in a sense, his opinions, needs to entertain his opinions, needs to think about those opinions, to be able to counter them. So that's the sparring that takes place, that's war. The king comes in, doesn't consider at all the prosecution. The prosecution is irrelevant. And so the case is over. But at the same time, could you say that there's still a case that was being made by the prosecution? Yes. It's just that now the king comes in, so now we've shut it down. So what happens when the president commutes a sentence, right, or pardons somebody, all the evidence, all the charges that were brought against them, they still have some kind of a place. It's just now they're irrelevant. They're rendered irrelevant because we've moved past it. Okay. But then you have a situation, let's say, where you have somebody, let's say he's on trial for murder. Right? So you have a court case, this person stands accused of murder. And everybody's arguing back and forth. And then what happens? The alleged murder victim walks in the door. What happens now? There's no case. It's not that we don't consider the reasons of the prosecution. There is nothing, because nothing ever happened. Right? So it's not just that you could dismiss the case because we couldn't find enough evidence. And so there wasn't enough merit for the case to stand. Or because we couldn't corroborate the evidence. Or because the witnesses there's nothing to talk about here. Nothing ever happened. Right? So the prosecution is completely silenced in that sense. Not that it's subdued or suppressed. There is no prosecution. So that's what we mean, the Ava of B'chol Meidach, with all your might, which corresponds to Yechida. There is no opposition, there is no opponent. It's not that the will of the animal, the godly soul, is so intense that it silences and overwhelms the animal soul. On this level, there's no challenge to the godly soul. Why not? Because as we explained, and we talked about this at length in the last Maimer, Yechida has no opposition. The essence of the soul has no opposition. In other words, when you have when you talk about the levels of Naran, these levels of the first levels of the soul, the internalized levels of the soul, the ones that correspond to our emotions and to our intellect, every idea can have a counter idea. I can think one way, I can think another way. Right? So there's always another side. I can feel one way, I can feel the opposite. I can feel love, I can feel hate. I can think this guy is innocent, I can think he's guilty. In all these things, both in emotions and in intellect, there's always room for another side, for a counter argument. Real intellect. Even when we talk about will, we're here already, that's already transcendent. I desire something. First of all, I could desire one thing, I could desire something else. Putting it in terms of Aveda, when we talk about the will of the godly soul, what do we say? That is Ratzon Shalom, that's beyond reason. Meaning, I serve God beyond rationale. So here, I'm serving God beyond rationale. So now I can't say there's an argument to serve God and an argument against serving God. There's no argument being made. It's beyond reason. But even in the level beyond reason, we know that we cannot serve God beyond reason as well. We can also behave inappropriately, irrationally. So even when we talk about beyond rationale, there's beyond rationale for the good, there's beyond rationale for the bad. There's also a counter to that. But when we talk about the essence of the soul, there's no counter to the essence of the soul. He says, Babur de Babur Leslo, which is interesting. In the last member, he quotes Babur de Babur Leslo to describe Yechida, the fact that there's no shade, there's no shadow of a shadow. He quoted from Gittin. Here he's quoting from Yavamas. There's similar situations. So the Gemara likes to talk about these things. The Gemara says that somebody was walking past the mountain and heard somebody on the mountain say that so-and-so's husband passed away. Since her husband passed away, she's now a widow, now she would be permitted to get married again. So it talks over there about this idea of a widow and how we can verify whether the husband passed away or not, and whether she's permitted to get married. So the Gemara asks, how do you know it was a person? Maybe it was a demon. It goes to the same thing. So the Gemara says, we saw it was an image of a person. Well, even demons could look like people. So he said, we saw the shadow. Demons also have a shadow. He said, saw the shadow of the shadow. So why can't we? So how does that preclude that it's not a demon? So he says, the Gemara says that Yonis and Shida tells me there's a not sure exactly what it means. The commentaries debate whether it means that there was a demon named Yonis, Johnny the demon, or there was a guy who was a demon expert, and he was like the go-to. He was like the professor who was the expert and studied demons his whole life. Either way, this Yonis and Shida told him that that demons have a shadow, but they don't have the shadow of the shadow. Okay, when you have the light shining on you, so that behind you creates a shadow, right? But when the light hits you a certain way, when you're close to it, so your shadow also has like a secondary shadow.
Double shadow.
You have a secondary shadow. So demons have a shadow; they don't have a secondary shadow. That's the one. But what's the point? How does it relate to what we're talking about here? We don't want to get
not
distracted.
seeing the secondary shadow is
Because there's no
Start
sun.
looking around. It's a good way to tell if your friends are here.
Your friends are demons.
The point over here, as it relates to what we're talking about the Maimer, we're not concerned here, not talking about demons and their shadows. What it means is, the demon represents unholiness, the forces of unholiness. That's what it represents. So we say that the demon can look like a person. The demon can have a shadow, but it can't have a shadow. What's a shadow? A shadow is already transcendent. It's not the person. There's you and then there's your shadow. Your shadow represents a transcendent level. So there are two levels of transcendence. There's the shadow, and then there's the shadow of the shadow. Corresponding to, as it relates to us, there's the opposition to everything that says Zelo Mazal Selakim also says that God creates everything with a counter, with an opposite. So even holiness, everything in holiness has a counter in unholiness. So that's what it means, that you could have a person, you could have a demon that looks like a person. You have holiness, and you have unholiness that could counter, that looks like it, that's similar to it. Then you can have a transcendent level of holiness, chaya, that transcendent level, the shadow. It's not the person itself, it's the shadow, that's the transcendent level of the soul. And you have the counter of that. In unholiness, there's also a shadow. But when you talk about the shadow of the shadow, the makif harachai, the distant transcendent, the next level out, that's yechida, the essence of the soul. There's no counter. And we discussed actually in the last minor. Why? Because we said, the Rebbe says, because it's the Kabbalah's miyachid. Since the essence of the soul is bound with God, he said, God creates everything with a counter. But something that's not a thing that was created doesn't have a counter. Only things that are created have a counter. Since the godly soul, the essence of the soul, the essence, yechida, is the Kabbalah's miyachid, it's sort of attached to that oneness of God. Since it receives from that oneness of God, so it follows there's no counterpart to it. There's no counter in the unholy. There's no lu'umazeh of that. Yes. The internalized love is in the neshama. Nefesh Ruach Neshama has a counter, and even Chaya, even the transcendent level. Serving God. Right. But we're going to explain this, and we'll get explained a little bit more in chapter 4. We'll get into this a little bit more, the practical sort of application of this, how we see this, practical manifestation. But the point is that I can understand godliness. I can also understand the opposite, right? I can even commit to God irrationally, my will, right? Chaya. I can also commit not to God irrationally. But when we talk about that essential bond with God, that there's no counter. Okay, so therefore that's the ultimate level of peace. Because here there's no, like we said before, in the analogy of a court case, there's no case. It's not that just the king comes in and subdues the prosecution completely. And in a way, there is no prosecution. There's nothing here. So therefore, when the Yechidah is revealed, then there's no opposite. So since the level of Chayim, since it has a counterpart in the unholy, since there's a counter to Chaya, since Chaya represents this idea of the will to serve Hashem that's non-rational, that's beyond rational, but since it is since it has a counterpart, so therefore it doesn't automatically eliminate the desires of the animal soul. It's just that it overwhelms it. It's just that it's so overwhelming, it's so intense. The intensity of the level of Chaya is such that you desire God so intensely that it overwhelms all the other desires of the animal soul. But in order to completely nullify, to completely eliminate the desires of the animal soul, that's only through revealing the level of Yechidah. How are we doing the time? So that's chapter. Let's finish up now. Note 27. Yeah. So the Rebbe says like this. Inside in the mind, the Rebbe was saying that when we talk about the level of nefesh, ruach, neshama, we're talking about an intelligent, or the ava, the love that we're trying to achieve through b'chol levavcha, which is to explain to the animal soul that it should desire godliness, that godliness is good for it, it should also love God. So he says that is a manner of war. Right? So we gave the analogy of a teacher trying to teach a student. In order to teach a student, you need to invest, you need to put your mind into the student's mind, right? You need to get into the student's head. Assess the student's abilities, assess the student's background and knowledge and capabilities, and then you can explain something to the student. Then there's something, what if the teacher comes in without assessing the student? You walk into a class, you don't care who's in the class or what their level is, you're going to just teach your material. It doesn't matter. So here, could we say that that's also milchama? Is that also investing in that? So the Rebbe is saying like this. The Rebbe is trying to make the point, the footnote, note 27, the Rebbe is trying to make the point of how that the love of b'chol levavcha, the idea of engaging the animal soul and trying to explain to it how God is good, is the ultimate love. It's like the greatest form of battle, of war. Remember, we talked about in the beginning of the Maimer that there are different types of war. You can wage war right from a distance, right, firing at each other from far, or you can engage in hand-to-hand combat, which is the most difficult type of war. So you want to say that b'chol levavcha is the most engaged, entangled kind of like mikravli, right? So he says like this: even if the teacher were to walk into a class and not assess the students, even that we can still consider war. Why? Because ultimately the teacher is doing what he's teaching. What's he teaching? He's teaching ideas. Those ideas, you can see them in two different ways. So the fact that you're already teaching something, an idea that's developed, that's polished, opens the door for the possibility of having a counter idea. Once I mount one argument, there's a possibility for you to mount a counter argument. Right? Whether it's good or not, is irrelevant. The fact is that there can be a counter argument. So what we're saying here is that, but here with b'chol levavcha, it's not just that the teacher is already teaching an argument that without assessing, without being invested in the student, just teaching them. The Rebbe says even that would be considered war, because you're opening up to the possibility of a counter argument. But how much more so we talk about b'chol levavcha, the idea of investing in the animal soul, transforming the animal soul, where here you're literally you have to put yourself in his mind. You have to validate his opinion, his position, his reality. So that's certainly considered weakness. He says like this, no 27. The nice was that close in that sefer gam zeh whatever the case, who be that shakal tayish shmis makom gam la'epet. Beside the fact that just the mere idea that we're talking about intellect, that b'chol avavcha is an intellectual argument to come to love God. So when you're talking about an intellectual argument, that has to be in a manner of shakal v'tayah, in a debate, in entertaining different ideas, which once you're doing that, you open the possibility to a counter idea. So that's already one. So nevertheless, furthermore, here when we're talking about b'chol avavcha, the idea of trying to convince your animal soul, the only way to do that is to really get yourself into the head of your animal soul. So that's certainly an even greater type of milchama, a greater type of war. Chapter 4 will continue this idea a little bit further, the idea, the expression of the practical application of this idea that the level of Yechid doesn't have a counterpart, how we see that expressed when we access the Yechidah versus the levels of B'chol Avavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, the love of that's rational and the love that's beyond rational.